Do you have a 2007 to a 2014 Cadillac Escalade? If you have one of these years, you probably want to check out my channel. In there, I will show you tons of repairs that you can do yourself with very little tools. It'll save you tons of money than rather you going to the dealership to have the work done. Just click up on the right hand corner and it'll take you to my playlist. But before we get started, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. As you may know already, I just got this Escalade and I don't know what the condition of the brakes are. And since I'm working on the brakes, I decided to change the wheel hub. So I'm going to change the calipers, the rotors, the brake pads, and the wheel hub on my front brakes, on both of my front brakes. Now before you get started, I want to warn you about one thing. I've been told by two parts stores that in 2008, if you have an early model 2008 Escalade, those calipers and brake pads are different from the later models. So you don't want to risk buying these parts online. So the best thing to do is to pull your caliper and your brake pads, go down to the parts store and make sure you got the right caliper and brake pad for your car. If you don't know, but you probably know by now, if you do this job yourself, you're going to be saving at least $1,000. The job itself isn't that hard. It's pretty easy as long as you have all your tools. And if you don't have these tools, this is a good excuse why you can buy new tools because you just saved $1,000. So let's get started. Okay, one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to jack up the front of our car. So the first step is blocking the back tires so it doesn't roll backwards on you. So one of the first things we're going to do is put a block to block the back tires so the car doesn't accidentally roll back. The next thing we want to do is make sure and double check that your car is in park. Then what you're going to do is pull out your jack and jack up the car. And you're also going to need a couple of jack stands. And you're going to get under the car and just behind the tire, right where the red arrow's at, you're going to look for the frame. You're going to see that the frame curves down, and right where these two holes are at, right where the red arrow's at, that's where you're going to place your jack to jack up the car. Now go ahead and jack your car up. Don't jack your car so high that the tire is off the ground. You still want it slightly on the ground so your tire doesn't turn. Once you've done that, we're going to remove this plastic cap. You're going to take your screwdriver and you're going to take a cloth and wrap it around your screwdriver so you don't scratch the cap or your rim. It's made out of plastic. Just go ahead and work the screwdriver through and the cap will pop right off. Just be careful not to scratch your rim or your cap. Okay, now we're going to remove the lug nuts. Now it doesn't matter if you have a star, a lug wrench, a pneumatic impact wrench, an electric impact wrench, or a battery powered impact wrench. Grab your 22mm socket and remove the lug nuts. Once you have all the lug nuts loose, don't remove the lug nuts quite yet. Go ahead and jack up your car a little bit until the tire is about 1 inch off the ground. Now at this point you don't want to remove the tire just yet. What you're going to do now is you're going to go back under the car and take a jack stand and place it right next to your jack and adjust it properly so it holds up the car. You can see where I placed the jack stand right next to the jack. That's really important. It's a safety measure. You never want to use just a jack to hold your car up. You always want a jack stand to support the vehicle's weight. Once you've done that, now you can remove your tire. Go ahead and roll it and set it aside. Now the next thing we're going to do is remove the caliper. And what I like to do is take the top part of the caliper off first. So the first thing we're going to do now is turn your wheels all the way to the left. You can do this by hand. If you have both sides of the car jacked up, I like to do both my brakes at the same time. It's up to you. If not, get in the car and turn your wheels all the way to the left. Okay, now that you've done that, if you look at the back, the caliper has 4 bolts in it. We're going to take the two 19mm bolts off first. Once you have those removed, take a screwdriver and work the caliper loose. As you can see here, it'll get loose, and just go ahead and pull up and it'll come right off. Go ahead and set the caliper aside. You can get a wire or bungee cord and just wire it up to the spring to get it out of the way for now. Next, we're going to remove these two 18mm bolts to remove the other half of the caliper. Once you got the bolts off, the caliper should just slide right off. You can see these pads are still good, but just for my peace of mind, I'm going to replace them with ceramic brake pads. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the brake line from the top of the caliper. You're going to need a 11mm socket. You're also going to need a drip pan. You're going to have a lot of brake fluid flow out, so you want it to land inside the pan, so you don't get it all over your driveway. I'm going to be replacing all my brake fluid, so I don't care if a lot of it drains out. That way I know I have fresh brake fluid in there. Now the next step we're going to do is we're going to remove this torque screw. It's a number 30. 9 times out of 10, these things are really hard to take off. If yours comes off easy, you're really lucky. Now if you don't have one of these screws, your rotor should come right off. But if you have one on like me, and it doesn't want to come out, this is what we're going to do to take it off. In order to take this screw out, you're going to have to apply some heat to it. I had to heat mine up for about 5 minutes or so. Once I got it really hot, I took my number 30 Torx bit and removed the screw. Now that you got that screw out, you can now remove your rotor. Go ahead and set it aside. The next thing we're going to do now is disconnect the ABS cable that's connected to your wheel hub. At the end of this plug is a connector, and in that connector there's a tab that you're going to unhook. Once you have it unhooked, it should come apart real easy. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to need like a small plastic pry bar like I got here. I picked this up at Harbor Freight, and just go ahead and wedge the cable off. Now the connector that's closest to the hub has kind of a special clip. I found using this angled needle tip thingy that I picked up at Harbor Freight works really good. You just push one side of the clip, get that out first, and you can see here I'm twisting the tool showing you what I did to get the other side out. You just unsnap it and it comes right out. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take that big nut off on the hub. It takes a 36mm socket. Just go ahead and remove it. Once you got the nut off, take off the washer. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the hub. In order for us to do that, here's a picture of the new hub, and you can see there's one bolt hole on top and two on the bottom. When you go to the back side of the hub, there's going to be one bolt on top and two on the bottom. You're going to use a 15mm socket to remove them. As you can see here, I'm taking out the bottom left bolt. Once I got that out, I turned the hub all the way to the right. Once I've turned it, you can see I'm removing the bottom right bolt. Once I have that loose, then I remove the top bolt. Using the swivel tool helps get your socket in there. Once you have the screws out, just slide the hub right out. Try and remember how that back plate was on there, so you're not having to figure it out later when you put it all back together. Okay, it looks like we have everything off now. At this moment, I'm taking some 180 sandpaper and just sanding off any burrs or rust that I see. This is a good time for you to clean and oil everything up and grease any zerk fittings that you see. You can see the rubber grommet filling up as I put the grease in. Okay, now I'm going to apply some brake grease on the shaft of the CV axle and on the hub itself. Once that's done, we're going to install the dust plate and the wheel hub to the CV axle. Before you slide it in though, you probably want to put your bolts in to get ready for the installation. Make sure your ABS wire is properly positioned. Once we slide it in, we're going to install the three 15mm bolts. Once you have all three bolts started, go ahead and use your impact and tighten up all the bolts. Again, using a 15mm socket. Now the next thing you're going to do is you're going to torque all three of these bolts at 133 foot-pounds. Move your hub wheel left or right so your torque wrench can have access. Now let's go ahead and reconnect your ABS cable. Everything should just snap right in. Now I'm applying some anti-seize on these threads here, so when I put that big bolt on in the future, it'll come out fairly easy. Put your washer in. Screw that big bolt in. Once you have it in, take your impact with your 36mm socket and tighten it up. Now the next thing you're going to want to do is to torque that big bolt. So you're going to need a long crowbar, and you're going to want to put the crowbar right against the studs just like it's shown. When you put the crowbar in, you're going to want the crowbar against that disc. You don't want the crowbar on the outside of those studs. You're going to put pressure on there. You don't want to bend the studs. If you don't have a long enough crowbar like I do, what I did is I just got a brick and put it underneath the crowbar, and it seems like that worked. Once you've done that, you're going to take your torque wrench and you're going to torque this bolt to 177 foot-pounds. Now I'm applying some anti-seize to the hub. This will prevent the rotor from getting stuck to the hub. Before you put that rotor on, make sure you wipe it down with some brake cleaner. These brake rotors are shipped with grease on both sides to prevent them from rusting while they're sitting on the shelf. So make sure you clean both sides of the rotor with some brake cleaner. If you don't, you're going to contaminate your brake pads. So make sure you clean your rotors with a brake cleaner. Okay, the next thing you want to do is put the torque screw in. But before you put it in, make sure you put some anti-seize grease in there. So the next time you do your brake job, you won't have a problem taking off that screw. Okay, now we're going to take the brake calipers and install the clips in the brake shoes. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to apply brake grease all over the caliper. You can see where I'm applying grease at. The clips just snap right in. Once you got them snapped in, make sure you put a lot of brake grease in those clips. This helps brake shoes slide in its proper position as you step on the brakes. Once you have the grease in, go ahead and install your brake pads. Now, believe it or not, there's a correct way to put these pads in your caliper. There's an inner and an outer brake pad. If you look at the brake pads, one of them has this little metal clip in it. This metal clip tells you that you're going to need to replace your pads. It's an early warning device. So when you hear your brakes squeaking, this is what's making that noise. It's telling you you need to change your brake pads. So this brake pad with the metal clip in it goes towards the inside of the car or towards the cylinders of the brake caliper as shown. Once you have your brake shoes in, let's go over to the car and install the caliper to the rotor. Okay, carefully pick up your caliper, walk over and slide the caliper into the rotor. Once you have it in position, install the two 18mm bolts. Tighten the bolts as best you can. Once you have both bolts in, go ahead and tighten them up with your impact. Now you're going to take your torque wrench and with your 18mm socket, you're going to tighten the bolt to 148 foot-pounds. Okay, now that we have all that done, we're going to install our brake line to the caliper. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our new caliper and unscrew the banjo bolt. When you unscrew it, you'll notice you have two copper washers. Those copper washers seal your brake line to the caliper, so make sure you don't lose them. Once you have it unscrewed, you're going to take your brake line and you're going to remove the old banjo bolt. You can see here I'm using a pair of pliers and I'm unscrewing the bolt. Once you remove one of the copper washers, the bolt should come right out. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take your banjo bolt, you're going to put one washer in the bolt, then what you're going to do is you're going to take your brake line and put the bolt in the brake line, and then put the other copper washer on the outside of the brake line. So you're going to have one on the inside and one on the outside of the brake line. Now you can go ahead and screw it into the caliper. Once you hand tighten it, go ahead and take your 11mm socket and tighten it up. Then take your torque wrench and torque it to 30 foot-pounds. Looks like we're getting closer to the end. In this next procedure, you're going to need a 10mm box wrench, some kind of a container, and a surgical hose, something similar to this one. Something with an approximately 3/16 ID and about 1.5 feet long. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to pop the hood and we're going to fill up the brake master cylinder with brake fluid. And as you can see here, it needs .3 brake fluid. You're going to want to put a rag around the master cylinder just in case you spill, and you're going to top it off. There is a max fill line on there, so be aware of that. Okay, now we're ready to bleed our brakes, but the first thing we need to do is we need to take that tubing and stick it in the bleeder fitting. Once you have that in there, take the other end of the tube and put it in the container that you have, as shown. As you can see, the reason why I do it this way is that it's almost impossible to get any spillage. It goes right into the container. Plus, if your brake fluid is clean, you could pour it right back into the master cylinder. Okay, now we're ready to bleed the brakes. So grab your 10mm wrench, and at this point, it's probably easier if you have somebody help you do this. You're going to want them to go in the car and step on the brake pedal and pump the pedal 4 times. And on the 4th pump, you want them to continually put pressure on the pedal. At that moment of time is when you turn the wrench to loosen the bleeder fitting, and you'll see brake fluid come out. If you see fluid passing through the tube with no air bubbles, that means you're good. Shut it off and you're good to go. Do this at least twice. If you see air bubbles going through the tube, you need to keep doing this procedure until you see no air bubbles.
Okay, go ahead.
1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it all the way down. Okay, again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it down. See how easy that was? Now let's go ahead and put a cap on our fitting. That prevents any dust from going in there. Looks like we're all done. Now it's time to put our tire back on. Just put it in place. Go ahead and put our lug nuts in by hand. Go ahead and ratchet them down with a 22mm socket. Once that's done, go ahead, remove your jack stand. With your floor jack, you want to lower your vehicle. Now you're going to take your torque wrench and we're going to torque these lug nuts at 140 foot-pounds. Okay, once we got that done, we're going to put our plastic cap on. If you notice on the back of the plastic cap, it has a picture of a valve stem. Go ahead and put your cap and align it to the valve stem. Snap it in. Now there's 2 more things left. What you want to do is top off your brake fluid, make sure you have enough, and keep an eye on it for a week or so, and remove the block and back of your vehicle, and you're all done. Well, you probably noticed by now I painted my calipers yellow. You can get this paint at any part store. It's caliper paint. They come in different colors. All right, we're all done. You just saved yourself around $1,000. Good job. Okay, well I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope it was very informative. Please check out my other how-to videos. Oh, and check out my new website. There's new items being put in there every day. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and of course, hit the bell. Until then, we'll see you at my next video. Bye.